This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Uganda on high alert as a 5-year-old child is confirmed to have the Ebola virus in Kasese. Mediator says Sudan talks to resume as the opposition ends a strike with a promise of a release of political prisoners. And the African Union condemns a Mali village attack and calls for justice after 95 people are killed. Hello and welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also ahead on the program, Ghana's economy projected to be among the fastest in the world, but can the people feel it? And in your sports, South Africa's Caster Semenya stars at a meeting in Montreal in France ahead of her appeal outcome against the IAAF. We begin with the Chinese president's 2-state visits in Central Asia this week. President Xi Jinping has left Beijing for Kyrgyzstan, where he will oversee the signing of a host of cooperation documents and attend various state events, including a welcoming ceremony hosted by the Kazakh president. Later in the capital city Bishkek, he will have a formal meeting with the other heads of state from the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. President Xi's other stop is Tajikistan, where he is expected to attend a summit aimed at looking for ways to promote peace, security and stability in Asia. Chinese Foreign Ministry said it was hopeful the visits could also lead to a new blueprint for cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative, as well as further developing bilateral cooperation.
We have solid political mutual trust, firmly supporting each other on issues of respective core interests and major concerns. Cooperation on the Belt and Road Initiative has deepened and delivered concrete outcomes, not to mention the fruitful cooperation in economy, trade, energy, connectivity, and people-to-people exchanges. We have effectively combated security challenges and made contributions to regional peace and stability. We have also maintained close coordination in regional and international affairs, jointly upheld multilateralism and an open world economy.
Uganda's health ministry has confirmed its first case of Ebola during the current outbreak. A 5-year-old child is receiving care after arriving from the Democratic Republic of Congo. The affected child, traveling with his family, entered Uganda's Kasese on June the 9th through Bwera border post. The World Health Organization said in a statement that this is the first confirmed case in Uganda during the Ebola outbreak ongoing in neighboring DRC. Since the epidemic began in August in eastern DRC of 2018, the health ministry said it had recorded 2,062 cases, including 1,390 deaths. Uganda has also suffered regular outbreaks of Ebola and Marburg over the years. However, its quick response has stemmed the spread of the high-fatality viral hemorrhagic fevers.
The child was detected by the health workers at Kagando Hospital with signs and symptoms of Ebola and immediately transferred and isolated at Bwera Hospital Ebola Treatment Unit for further management. A blood sample was drawn and sent for testing at Uganda Virus Research Institute very early on the morning of June 11th, and the sample tested positive for Ebola. All the other Congolese family members have been identified and are in isolation at Bwera Hospital. 2 of them had their samples removed when they developed symptoms similar to that of Ebola, and the samples are on their way to UVRI. Results will be communicated tomorrow. 8 contacts have been line listed and are being followed up. The Ministry of Health, the World Organization, and the Center for Disease Control have dispatched a rapid response team to Kasese to support the teams who are on the ground to continue with the various activities, including contact tracing and case management. The Ministry of Health, WHO and CDC will undertake ring vaccination of contacts to the case and other non-vaccinated frontline health workers, as well as other workers beginning 14th June 2019.
We are following that development in Uganda for you. Irene Nakasita, Coordinator Communications from the Uganda Red Cross Society, is joining us now with more on this latest news from Uganda. Irene, thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. What is the condition of the child now, and what is the fate of the relatives of the child who have had close contact with the boy?
Well, thank you so much. You've already mentioned my name. I'm called Irene Nakasita, and I'm the spokesperson for the Uganda Red Cross.
Irene Nakasika, we will be joining Irene in a short while if we can. Apologize for that loss of signal. Well, let's look at other stories we're following for you at the moment. And to Sudan, where talks are set to resume in Sudan between the Transitional Military Council and the Opposition Declaration of Freedom and Change Forces. Since Sunday, Sudanese protesters have been taking part in a nationwide civil disobedience campaign. This comes after the opposition coalition called for a general strike in response to a military crackdown at a protester camp in Khartoum. Much of the country has been shut down ever since, and at least 118 people have been killed over the past few days. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has stepped in as mediator after weeks of negotiations broke down between the two sides. Abiy Ahmed flew into the Sudanese capital Khartoum on Friday and held separate talks with both parties. On Tuesday, the Prime Minister's representative Mahmoud Darreir announced that the ruling military council has agreed to resume talks and will release political detainees. Separately, the opposition has said that they will hold the civil disobedience. Both sides have agreed not to make statements that could delay negotiations or undermine Ethiopia's efforts.
There is no going back from what was agreed upon. I repeat, no going back from prior arrangements that were made in the past negotiations and discussions between the parties. Where the Presidential Council is concerned, negotiations will continue in goodwill and in the same spirit initiated by Prime Minister of Ethiopia. There was a visit to our brother country Sudan by the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Dr. Abiy Ahmed. We consider this great country of Sudan as a neighbor, and we also recognize the historical heritage that binds the people of the two countries together.
Well, let's return to Kampala, where Uganda's health ministry has confirmed its first case of Ebola during the current outbreak in the DRC. A 5-year-old child is receiving care after arriving from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Let's hear more now from Irene Nakasita. She's the Coordinator Communications Uganda Red Cross Society. Irene, can you give us a brief of the condition of the child and the condition of the relatives who've been put under quarantine?
Well, thank you so much. Apparently, what I can report about from Kasese is that the health minister this morning went to join the team, the technical teams that are supporting people, the family that was actually affected. And it's still a rumor. It's still a rumor that this child could have passed on, but we are waiting for official communication from the health minister or the Minister of Health about the fate of this child and the family. But by last night, we just had a confirmed case and there was no death. So we are waiting for official communication from the Minister of Health regarding that.
Well, Irene, the World Health Organization had initially warned that if the virus crosses the border from the DRC into Uganda, it would indicate a critical stage in the crisis. Why do you think there was this emphasis on preventing the virus from crossing the border?
Well, I'm sure we all know that Ebola is very contagious and kills people very fast. So in our preparedness efforts, we had to stiffen the preparedness efforts to make sure that the virus does not cross, because it's very, very hard to manage once it crosses. It's just unfortunate that this case actually did cross to Uganda, and we are worried about maybe the other porous border points where some people are not using official cross-border points to enter into the country. But at least where the official border points are gazetted, we have screening centers there, and whoever crosses is screened. So I'm sure the preparedness ladder, we consider several steps. And once now that it has crossed, we have to change from just preparedness to actual response to be able to manage and contain it.
So this is quite a concern for the health officials in Uganda. And this case in Kasese is about a family that had crossed into the DRC for the funeral of a relative. This is posing a challenge, though. What kind of challenges do these relationships between the bordering villages in Uganda and the DRC pose for the prevention of the spread of the Ebola virus?
Of course, the challenges are that people will be exposed to, or will actually have will be scared that they can actually easily get in contact with these people and can easily also get affected. However, we have teams that are supporting these people, and we already have community surveillance-based teams that are helping in managing this. So the threats are there, that it's very possible. We have so many local beliefs. Some people actually in Congo believe that Ebola does not exist, but we know that with the training and the preparedness that we have made, even in communities, we shall be able to contain this. So we are not so scared since the cases are not so many. We still believe we have space and we have a chance to contain the outbreak.
Well, of course, the region, Irene, is watching this very closely, given the throwback to the West African Ebola crisis in 2014. Now, the World Health Organization is reported to have said that 4,700 people in Uganda have been given the Ebola vaccine and that several thousand others have been trained in monitoring and response. How much of a difference will this make in terms of preventing the situation from worsening?
Maybe from the actual, what I can say about that is we trust that the frontline workers should be protected also, because as they serve these huge numbers of people that cross the border from Congo to Uganda on a daily basis, if they are protected, then they can easily also protect the communities. Because on a daily basis, somebody interfaces with somebody in the community to sensitize them about Ebola, or to even touch them, because as they cross, we have people who are screening them. So that contact is a risk or a threat. But the fact is, the frontline workers were actually vaccinated, and the Ministry of Health and World Health Organization have also already put in place mechanisms for vaccinating the rest of the people who may be new, maybe on board, or who are yet to join the task force. So this is, for me, a very good thing, because we believe the frontline workers should be protected first, since they interface with these people on a daily basis, and this can actually stop the spread of the virus to the communities where they go to serve.
Irene Kasese joining us there. Irene Nakasita, I beg your pardon, joining us there from Kampala. Thank you. Now, the Supreme Court in the Democratic Republic of Congo has nullified the election of 20 opposition members of parliament over the vote rigging. The decision has sparked an uproar among the legislators, saying it is unlawful. They have threatened to mobilize the masses against the court. Well, let's now cross over to Chris Ochamringa in Kinshasa. He's following that story for us. Chris, what was the immediate reaction of the opposition side to this ruling?
Well, they were very, very disappointed. They issued a statement condemning the ruling by the court and saying that the judges were playing politics, that they were bribed by some legislators from the coalition of the former president Joseph Kabila, and they say that they will not take this lying down. They are going to talk to their supporters to rise up against the Supreme Court judges to change this decision, which they're saying is very unfair. It's political persecution.
Chris, this is all very sudden, though. What is it all about, though? What are the facts of this case?
Well, after the elections last year, there were so many MPs people who were contesting for these seats, about 15,000 of them. And so what happened is the majority of the people who emerged victorious were from a coalition known as Common Front for Congo, that's led by the former president Joseph Kabila. Now, the court, after the election, so many people went to court to challenge the results of their rivals. And so the court has taken this long, it's now 6 months, looking at the merits of the case, and they eventually came up with these 20 names, all of them from the opposition. So the opposition members were accused of vote rigging and committing other electoral offenses that are prohibited in DRC's law. And so this is what it's all about. They are saying this is unfair, it's political persecution.
And we do understand that the opposition members of parliament have issues with the former President Joseph Kabila's party, which is set to benefit in a big way from this ruling. Can you tell us more about this?
Yes, already the coalition of the former president, Common Front for Congo, has the majority of seats in parliament and even in the Senate. And so basically they control the issues of the legislator in the DRC. That is the reason why President Tshisekedi entered a coalition with the former President Joseph Kabila, so that they can not have a stalemate, because that was one of the big issues that happened. That's why for so many months there was no prime minister. He was just appointed last month. And so they are saying, the opposition members are saying that, look, these people already have the big share of the cake in parliament. And now they're taking away the little that we have. Some of them are saying that they have been very critical, raising issues that are for the development of the DRC, and that this is a ploy by the coalition of former President Kabila to push them out of parliament so that they cannot challenge some of the decisions that they take in the House.
All right, Chris Ochamringa joining us there from Kinshasa. Thank you. And now for an update on the attack at a Dogon village in Mali. Prime Minister Boubou Cissé has been visiting the village of Sobane Da, where 95 people have been killed in a massacre on Monday. The attackers, believed to be from the Fulani ethnic group, set fire to homes and forced people outside before shooting at them. Since January, the Sahara nation has been engulfed in escalating retaliatory clashes between Fulani herders and Dogon hunters. In an earlier attack in March, over 150 Fulani villagers were killed by Dogon gunmen in one of the worst acts of bloodshed in Mali's recent history. Cissé only became prime minister in April after the growing violence led to the entire Malian government stepping down.
They immediately encircled the village and shot at everything that moved. So everywhere people were screaming, children were screaming. They all fled into their homes. Then they went into their homes, set them alight, and all those who tried to run were shot down.
What happened here is a tragedy. It's a tragedy for Mali. It's a tragedy for humanity. It was important for us to come here in the name of the President, to present our condolences, to recollect, to show compassion to those who lost people who are very close. Today, 35 people have been identified dead, among them 24 children who were shot in the back. It's important that no one forgets this. It's a horror we have witnessed here. Just to tell you how horrible it was horrific. I think that what happened challenges most of us and must prompt us to accelerate our efforts that were already underway, political, security, and economic efforts to accelerate the peace and reconciliation process. What happened wounds us deeply, but we must also draw lessons from it.
Meanwhile, the African Union has condemned those murders in Mali that has left at least 95 people dead at the Dogon village. It says everything must be done to identify the perpetrators of the Monday killings. Coletta Wanjohi reports from Addis Ababa.
Among those killed in the Mali ethnic violence are children. The attackers killed animals and also burnt down houses. 19 people are reported to be missing. The AU Commission chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat has described the violence as despicable. He says everything must be done to identify the perpetrators of the attack and bring them to justice. The recent killings in Sobame Da in Mopti region comes less than 3 months after more than 150 people from the Fulani ethnic group were reportedly killed by those from the Dogon. Violence between the Fulani and Dogon is adding to an already dire security situation in Mali. Part of Mali harbors the Al-Qaeda and ISIS militants. The UN has over 14,000 troops and police stationed in Mali, a mission it has ranked as one of the most dangerous. Coletta Wanjohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. ECOWAS member countries meet in Abuja to review efforts to curb human trafficking in the region. And Kenya's environment management body shuts down 20 factories over pollution of Nairobi River.
Economic data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Penina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed.
And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's head over to Mauritius now, where a Chinese delegation of the National People's Congress has been visiting the island nation this week. The delegation was headed by Wang Shen, a member of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee and Vice Chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress. Wang met the acting President Viapuri and Prime Minister Jagnot. During a meeting with the acting president, Wang brought up Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Mauritius last year, where the two leaders set out a new blueprint for the development of China-Mauritius relations. At his meeting with the Prime Minister, Wang said that China firmly supports the legitimate and reasonable demands of African countries, including Mauritius, on the issue of decolonization. ECOWAS member countries are meeting in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, to review efforts to curb human trafficking in and out of the region. Latest estimates by the Global Slavery Index shows that out of the 40.3 million victims of modern slavery worldwide, 9.24 million are from Africa, with the West African region contributing the lion's share. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam has more.
Representatives from 15 ECOWAS member countries brainstorming on the most effective ways to combat human trafficking in the West African region. For the past years, member countries in the region have been working closely, sharing information and harmonizing strategies against human trafficking. But clearly, there's a lot more to be done. The region has remained a hub for human trafficking, traffickers exploiting rampant poverty, porous borders, and weak institutions as important loopholes.
We think we have, not done too well, and that's why we have this annual meeting, is in terms of collaboration. And collaboration is very difficult. It's easier said than done. So collaboration, you need to improve it. It's work in progress. So that's why we have these meetings. We take a report from each country, identify the gaps, discuss the gaps among ourselves, and then in the process, prefer solutions that will make it, easier or for better collaboration.
Nigeria, which is hosting the summit, is the highest source of victims for traffickers. Sometimes it's a transit and destination point for human trafficking. More than 1 million are trafficked from here every year, most of them in their youthful years and eager to build a better future elsewhere. But quite often, those dreams end up fading midway in a tragic experience.
The future peace, prosperity and stability of our societies rest on our effective implementation of sound counter-trafficking measures within a wider human security and criminal justice approach, emphasizing good governance, sustainable economic and social development.
Some recent reports suggest many victims from the ECOWAS region have been forcibly conscripted as fighters by warring factions in Libya. Others end up as sex slaves and slave laborers, which is why these delegates want to craft a more effective framework to curb the crime. Besides strengthening interstate collaboration, member countries have also been running a sensitization campaign to prevent people from falling prey to human traffickers. There's also a plan to roll out vocational skill acquisition to enable returnees start afresh back home. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Increased airstrikes in Somalia have caused a major shift in the battle against Al-Shabaab and pro-ISIL militants fighting the Somali government. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo reports on how effective Washington's aerial campaign has been in enabling Mogadishu to challenge the militant group.
The Somali president is touring newly liberated towns and villages in southern Somalia. In April, government forces retook control of Sabit and Anole, two rich agricultural towns from the militant group Al-Shabaab. The capture of these strategic towns has denied the group a major source of funding. The group maintained 2 taxation points here from which it imposed taxes on the farming community in the area and surrounding regions.
We want to push out all the terrorists from their strongholds just as we did in Sabit and Anole. Our mission is to create peace, stability and provide security for our people. And to achieve this, we must take this fight right to the militants' doorstep.
An increase in airstrikes by U.S. military has helped turn the tide in the war against terror. In the past month, U.S. Africa commanders carried out 7 airstrikes north of the country, neutralizing dozens of militants from Al-Shabaab, as well as a pro-Islamic state group based in the Golis Mountains in Puntland. Experts say the strikes are effective and have managed to contain Africa's deadliest militant group, but warn that with no ground operations, militants will continue to pose a threat to the country's national security.
It seems the airstrikes have significantly slowed down. I wouldn't use the word that they use all the time, degrade, yet, but we can see it's a slowdown, and that's something that the forces on the ground, who are the Somalis and the AMISOM, should be making more advances on the ground.
Experts say the capture of strategic towns and villages near the city will allow the Somali government to secure Mogadishu from deadly militant attacks that have in the past targeted government installations, security personnel, downtown markets and populated areas within the city.
Never again will we allow militants to use places like this to manufacture bombs and load them into trucks that lead them to kill and target innocent civilians. We will not accept that.
Last month, Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for a deadly car bomb at an army checkpoint in Mogadishu, killing 10 people, among them a former government minister. Meanwhile, police have beefed up security across the capital as the army leads the way in liberating towns and villages still under the terror group's control. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
The Nairobi River is but a pale shadow of its former self. Despite several attempts by present and former local administrations to clean it, it remains filthy, with reports of dead bodies found floating during cleanup exercises. Now, Kenya's National Environment Management Authority has closed more than 20 factories in Nairobi's industrial area for discharging effluent. Closure is part of the 100-day countrywide rapid results initiative. CGTN's Robert Nagila has the story.
The Nairobi River is a river that cuts across the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. It is the main river in the Nairobi River Basin, a complex of several parallel streams that flows eastwards. All of the Nairobi Basin rivers join east of Nairobi and meet the Athi River, eventually flowing to the Indian Ocean. These rivers are mostly narrow and highly polluted. Not too long ago, one could swim, catch fish and even drink the water of the Nairobi River. But all that is but a distant memory now. The river is now polluted with all types of waste. Industrial waste, chemicals and heavy metals, among other pollutants, have taken hold of the river. Other threats are from agricultural activities and car wash runoff water. There are several makeshift structures along the banks, with a stretch occupied by motor vehicle and motorcycle garages that discharge all sorts of waste into the river. Human waste from several public toilets and garbage disposal centres along the river have choked the river to a point where it can barely flow. The biggest polluters of the rivers in Nairobi include a broken sewer system in many parts of the city, big factories that release their waste into the water bodies, and settlements with no toilets. In the past decade, several attempts to clean up the river have yielded successful results, but it always returns to its former filthy state as a result of a lack of enforcement of the city's bylaws. Robert Magila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
To neighboring South Sudan now, where the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, Save the Children, and South Sudan's government have launched a mobile application to fight violence against children in the country. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports from Juba.
Save the Children says the new online database and application are designed to better protect children in emergencies. It has been customized for South Sudan with a database of child protection cases, which case workers can update and monitor in real time. This removes the need for paperwork while in the field.
We believe that, in the best interest of the children, this technology will help us further our mandate, especially the backbone of our program, who are the case workers, actually will be able to make the best use of this technology in upholding our mandate.
UNICEF says the innovation will drastically reduce administration, giving case managers more time to dedicate to supporting vulnerable children. The app has the capacity to take photos and record audio to make it much easier for case workers to trace families and reunite children with their parents. 6 years of war in South Sudan have exposed many children to violence, including those conscripted into armed forces. South Sudan's government says the mobile application will go a long way in helping vulnerable children.
Having such tools in hand will guide us and will protect us, and will even give us a good ground where we can be able maybe to attract a lot of children to come, and then their problems will be resolved. As you know, many of the children are still not reunified with their families. Many of the children in these countries are facing multiple vulnerabilities.
Internet connectivity is poor in many parts of South Sudan, so UNICEF and Save the Children say the data can be downloaded on the mobile app and then synced at the end and beginning of the day. The app is designed to work across different agencies, linking up case managers across the country and ensuring a continuity of support for each child registered in the system. UNICEF and Save the Children hope it will make a major impact in safeguarding South Sudan's vulnerable children. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Meanwhile, in Egypt, with one divorce reported every 4 minutes, the country has one of the highest divorce rates in the world. It is estimated that more than 40% of marriages end within the first 5 years. The country seeks to create marriage classes as a prerequisite for all couples before they tie the knot. CGTN's Adel Mahroui has more.
The entire nation is moving to cut divorce rates, and it appears one solution called affection. Even Parliament has been discussing a law to make these classes a prerequisite for marriage.
We believe that our current divorce rates are a threat, and as a national institution, it's our duty to get rid of the excessive divorce rates. Our course is just a projection. It's like a rehabilitation center for those about to get married. We discuss psychology, sociology, character profiles, fertility, and birth control.
Hundreds of young men and women have graduated from these 12 sessions pre-marriage courses. With the tuition fees of only $5, they are made to be affordable for all segments of society. The classes aim to educate those to be wed about the expectations of marriage life and how to deal with common issues before tying the knot.
The course attracted me a lot because it doesn't focus only on religious issues. There are interior designers and psychiatrists involved to give advice of many aspects of living with a partner. There's science behind the curriculum. The closer I get to getting married, the more fearful thoughts arise. I'm currently single. Still, I want to be prepared when the time comes.
Classes are designed for couples to be. However, divorcees have also found it an excellent opportunity to make better choices before they remarry.
I'm about to get engaged, and I believe this course will help me avoid any mistakes. I've had a previous family, so my next marriage won't be easy. I came to gain experience from lecturers and other participants to learn how to make things work out. We've created a unit to preserve the unity of the Egyptian family. We are getting positive feedback on these courses.
Our first had 60 students. Now, the class is 120.
These courses also work as an affordable substitute for marriage counseling. They appear to be appealing for many who fear to be among the 44% who ends up getting divorced within the first 5 years of marriage. It is still too early, though, to measure the impact these courses have on the staggering divorce rates in Egypt. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Let's bring you an update on the Uganda Ebola case, and we are receiving news indicating that the 5-year-old child who was being treated in Kasese for Ebola has died. Uganda's health ministry confirmed its first case of Ebola during the current outbreak after the child was taken for treatment when they arrived from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And again, we are receiving news indicating that the 5-year-old child who was being treated in Kasese for Ebola has died. Uganda's health ministry has confirmed its first case of Ebola during the current outbreak after the child was taken for treatment when they arrived from the Democratic Republic of Congo. You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. Ghana's economy projected to be among the fastest in the world, but can the people feel it? And civil society groups in Uganda oppose a plan by South Africa's Bonang Power to develop a power plant on the River Nile.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Ghana is projected to be among the world's fastest growing economies in 2019. The International Monetary Fund estimates that the country's GDP will expand by 8.8% this year. That is double the average rate of emerging economies. But as CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports, many Ghanaians say they are yet to see the real benefits.
Lydia Kwashi sells tomatoes at the Kaneshi market in Accra. She says business is slow.
Sales are very low these days. We sit here from morning and don't get people to buy our tomatoes. The president, Akufo-Addo, has to tackle the harsh economy. This is not what he promised us. We are really struggling.
Poor sales means big losses. If the tomatoes aren't sold, they go bad. This means Kwashi often ends up in debt to her suppliers, who sometimes give her the tomatoes on credit. Many of the traders here say they haven't yet felt a significant improvement in the economy. This despite the International Monetary Fund predicting Ghana would be the world's fastest growing economy in 2019. Away from the market, some Ghanaians share similar concerns about the economy.
The economy is hard and things are now very expensive. I sell children's clothing. Last month, I had to increase the price of those clothes and people can't afford it.
I want to tell you it's too much.
There is too much economic hardship in the country. Students are graduating from school and can't get jobs.
Inflation rose to 9.5% in April from 9.3% in March this year, according to Ghana's Statistical Service. Some economic analysts say it may take some time for citizens to see an improvement in the economy.
Though we have accelerated growth, the growth does not really appear to be inclusive in the sense that the living condition from the general perspectives, there is still more work to be done.
Analysts also say Ghana needs to maximize benefits from its oil exploration in order to improve the economy.
What we would have to work on is the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, where government have to prioritize some areas and then take the money to, that's the interest that comes to Ghana. I think that it's about time we concentrate on infrastructure.
However, for many traders here, like Lydia Kwashi, they hope the economic growth predicted by the IMF will translate into day-to-day improvements. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Critics in Uganda have taken to social media to oppose a plan by South Africa's Bonang Power and Energy to develop a 360-megawatt power plant on the River Nile. They say this could have a negative impact on the popular tourist attraction Murchison Falls, located between Lake Kyoga and Lake Albert. The announcement by the country's electricity regulatory authority indicating an applied permit for a feasibility study on the project has since stoked outrage. However, a definite decision on the project has not been taken, and a review of the application would take public criticism into consideration. British Prime Minister Theresa May has hit out against modern slavery while speaking during the 100th anniversary of the International Labour Organization. In one of her final appearances before she leaves office in July, she says it is more important than ever to accelerate the fight. She called on world leaders to undertake the role of curbing exploitation. She's also set to announce a new international modern slavery and migration envoy to help coordinate the UK's efforts with other nations.
It has been 100 years of steady progress. 100 years that have built the foundation on which we stand today as we gather in Geneva to look to the future of work and to ensure that future works for us all. Because advances in technology and culture are already revolutionising the workplace. But how we respond and how we prepare for and anticipate advances that have yet to happen is crucial. For it will determine the extent to which that revolution brings benefits rather than just change, and whether those benefits are felt by just a handful of individuals or each and every one of us. But there is still much more work for all of us to do. So as I prepare to step down as Prime Minister, I believe it is more important than ever that we not only continue the fight against modern slavery, but that we accelerate it, that we recommit ourselves to the task, that we match our words with actions, and do all that we can to meet the UN's goal of ending this abhorrent crime by 2030. Because modern slavery is simply immoral. No leader worthy of the name can look the other way while men, women and children are held against their will, forced to work for a pittance or no pay at all, routinely beaten, raped and tortured.
The brand's top 100 list has been revealed at the New York Stock Exchange. It presents this year's most valuable global brands as ranked by market research specialists. Some familiar names are on top, and more Chinese companies are making their presence on the list as well. CGTN's John Terrett reports.
The elegant Freedom Hall inside the historic New York Stock Exchange. We're all here to find out which companies top an influential ranking of the 100 most valuable global brands for 2019. But first, I need to work out what a brand actually is.
To me, a brand really has meaning, and I think that is, for me, the essence of a brand, is that it stands for something.
A brand is something that evokes a feeling, a loyalty.
The brand is the reason that I will actually stand up and say this is something that stands for me, it's something I can relate to, and it's something that speaks to who I am.
The event, the Brand Z Top 100, is hosted by advertising giant WPP and Kantar, a data consultancy firm. This is 2019's Top 10 on screen. As for the top 3 places, well, down 2 to number 3 is Google, behind second place Apple, and a brand new Brand Z number 1, Amazon.
Only 14 years ago, 2006, can you guess how many Chinese brands were on the ranking? Only 1.
This year, it's 15, including Alibaba at 7 and Tencent at 8 in the top 10, and 4 newcomers too. Haier, the home appliance maker, Didi, the ride-sharing company, Meituan, a food delivery firm, and Xiaomi, which makes consumer electronics.
We need strong brands. So we are very excited to see that more and more Chinese brands are successful in and beyond China.
This year's special guest is Haier's chairman and executive director.
We believe brand strategy is extremely important for a company that wants to scale.
David Roth, the Master of Ceremonies, says the 15 Chinese firms in the Brand Z 100 are now uniquely placed to promote not only their own brands, but brand China too.
In exactly the same way as in the 60s and the 70s, when American brands started to go global, they brought with them, right across the world, the images of Americana, Coca-Cola, McDonald's. And I think in the same way Chinese brands have the opportunity to help define what brand China is outside of China.
The total value of the 2019 Brand Z 100 is $4.7 trillion. But no matter how eye-popping the numbers are, the industry knows that maintaining a strong brand depends on one key element: customers.
We are very glad to see the Chinese brands are building their relevance and meaning to the consumers and providing better and better products.
And no doubt you'll be seeing all these brand logos on supermarket shelves, in bus shelters, and during TV commercial breaks the world over. Meanwhile, I'm doing some branding all of my own, from our company jacket with the logo on just here, to my brand new baseball cap just in time for the season. John Terrett, CGTN, New York.
And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. We'll tell you why falafel is the most popular meal in Egypt.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
So let's now talk matters cuisine. Egyptians take their falafel seriously. Perhaps it's because their version is unlike any other. This chickpeas-like food item, known in some countries as green burgers, is being hailed by luminaries such as the Egyptian-born culinary anthropologist Claudia Rodden as the best in the world. Asa Hakim looks at its importance for Egyptians and exactly how it is cooked.
It's a common scene every morning. Falafel sandwiches, or in plates with beans, are the main meal to start the day for Egyptians. And it's called ta'amiyya in Egypt.
I eat it every day. Every day. I come here for years for the dish of falafel with beans.
It's my first choice. I don't think twice about what to have for breakfast every day. You eat the falafel with beans. It's delicious and affordable.
Falafel originated in Egypt over 200 years ago. It then spread to Lebanon, Syria and Yemen, each adding their own distinct flavors to the mix.
It's heavy with protein, so it keeps you full and energetic all day. Falafel is also the cheapest food item. Therefore, it's the main dish for most Egyptians every day.
Falafel is not so hard to cook. It consists of beans and a vegetable mix.
You put onion, garlic, parsley, coriander with green vegetables, then you add squashed beans. You can then form the resulting paste in any shape you want and then fry it in oil. You can add hot sauce if you want it spicy. Some people buy the paste and fry the falafel at home.
Those protein rings have become popular internationally, and they're cooked in different ways.
There's the long falafel, looks like kebab. There's the round donut ones, which are the most popular and can have spicy and stuffed falafel too. Other countries add hummus or eggs to the mix instead of squashed beans.
Whenever you visit Egypt, the ta'amiyya or falafel should be the #1 item on your bucket list. And for a true Egyptian experience and flavor, you should buy it from one of the small shops here in the streets, not from a fancy restaurant. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Looks delicious over there in Egypt. Well, let's now take a look at your sports news. Here's what's ahead. South Africa's Caster Semenya stars at Meeting de Montreal in France ahead of her appeal outcome against the IAAF.
Africa, where champions are made
records are